The following podcast was recorded between New York and Germany.
Hey, this is Andy Taylor, voice of the U.S. Open Tennis Championships, and you are watching and listening to PAA Game Day.
Please welcome the host of PAA Game Day and a public address announcer for Syracuse University and Colgate University, as well as the New York State Public High School Athletic Association for numerous championships, Tom Winiecki.
Welcome back, everybody, to our 14th podcast here on PAA Game Day, that show that peeks behind the curtain at the voices that we hear all the time, but we rarely get to know. Whether you found us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or online at paagameday.com or somewhere else, we're glad that you're here. And if you like this episode, please share us wherever you get this podcast. And after today's show, if you could, please take a moment and leave us a review. We use that feedback to improve our future episodes, so we'd appreciate it if you could take a moment and do that for us. So far, we've been fortunate to talk with public address announcers from minor league baseball, Major League Baseball, the National Basketball Association, the NBA's G League. We also talked with PA folks from the NHL, the NFL, MLS, the WNBA, horse racing, major college athletics, and the Olympic Games. Well, today, we hope we have another treat for you because, quite frankly, it is for me. Our guest has announced events all over the world, from fencing and taekwondo at the Olympic Games, to a World Taekwondo Championship, to squash, to something called paddle. The way I understand it, it's kind of a cross between squash and tennis. And the sport of letway, which, if you have any idea what this is, it is a sport not for the faint of heart. Now, what many of you may know him for, though, is as the stadium voice at the U.S. Tennis Open every fall in Flushing Meadows down in Queens, New York. So let's please welcome to PAA Game Day, Andy Taylor. Andy, it goes without saying, thank you for making some time for us today.
Tom, thank you. It's great to hear your pipes. And what was really cool is to hear that extensive list of people and the different genres they work in sport, because it means there's still so many opportunities out there for people, especially as technology and new sports come along. We're all evolving into this new way of sport presentation, and there's going to be even more bigger opportunities for folks that are up and coming and folks that have been doing this for years. So it's very cool that you've given this platform and those folks an opportunity to talk about what they do to hopefully inspire the next generation of talent to get out there and get the work done.
Well, thank you, Andy. Thank you very much. So we might as well jump right in here. How does somebody who grew up in Boston, then lived in the woods in the American Midwest, how does that person end up as the stadium voice at the U.S. Open?
It's crazy, and let's take the long way to get there, okay? My dad was a broadcaster in Boston. And for those of your viewers who maybe grew up in the area and you're familiar with radio back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, he was part of the Lauren and Wally morning show on WVBF, which became WROR, and it was just a party every single morning where they'd have voice actors doing characters and people calling in and having a blast. So that's what I witnessed adults doing as I was growing up. And I said to myself, this is the lane that I want to take when I get older. And so while I was in high school, my mom and dad were like, listen, you really should go to college. But I was already working in broadcasting. I was cleaning toilets and stuff like that at a small radio station in Framingham. But it gave me an opportunity to work with the gear and to learn more about the business. And I was kind of well on my way to getting opportunities to get on the air. And I didn't want to interrupt that by going to college. But I did get some money from Emerson College in Boston. And so I went for a semester and then eventually dropped out. Mm-hmm. And I wound up hitting the road, doing the radio thing, just like my dad dad did, traveling the country, finding my footing, learning how to relate to individual audiences. Now, early, I was moving into a house one weekend, a call from a friend of mine at Silver Dollar City in Branson. And she said, listen, the USTA is in town, and they're doing a cup event. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't watched tennis in 10 years. I don't know what events are played on asphalt, grass, dirt. I have no idea. She said, well, they really just need you to read what they put in front of you. It's a big deal for the U.S. Fed Cup team. They're taking on Israel. Would you do this? Because it was a friend who was recommending me for this, it was like, of course, I will do that. And it made me, because I was trying to get moved into this. But anyway, I went and I did the event. And at the end of the second day, I got a tap on my shoulder from somebody who was working with the USTA, I guess. It was just a dude in like a blazer and a ball cap. And he said, hey, listen, this was great. What would you think about doing this at the U.S. Open in New York? So here I am. I'm like 26 years old, 27 years old. I'm like, give me a break. I'm in the middle of the Midwest, in the middle of nowhere. These opportunities don't present themselves. I just looked at him and I said, yeah, whatever, pal, and walked away. And so, I got my $200 or whatever it was working that event that weekend. And about 2 weeks later, after the radio show, I was down in my office and getting some production done. And I got a phone call, and it was from the United States Tennis Association out of New York, New York. And they were like, no, listen, we would like you to come out and audition at the U.S. Open. And just a little tip, by the way, please, next time the president of the USTA taps her, please don't blow him off. It's not a good look.
Oh, no. No, it's not.
Yeah, but that's how that all came together, is like this shot of lightning came out of nowhere, giving me the opportunity to go up there and give it a shot myself. And in that first U.S. Open, I shared the mic with this legendary voice, Tom Morera, who was, very calm and collected. You remember the stadium voices of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, how they were very calm. So they would put me on the day sessions, and it worked really well for them. We had, performing artists from Asheville and everybody else that were part of the production, part of the show, and they wanted that energy reflected in the vocal presentation as well. And so that's what I brought, both to special events that were going on, but also the action that was happening on the court. And what was amazing, which made me fall in love with the sport of tennis, was this was my first U.S. Open, was 2002. And tennis in a very long time, but I still recognize these names. Andre Agassi and Pete Sampras, the men's final, and it was Pete Sampras' 10th and final slam before he retired. That was my U.S. Open. The night before, it was Venus and Serena Williams in the final. My very first U.S. Open, an All-American final in both the men's and singles competition, and I was hooked. The energy in New York was unmatched, and I was like, it must be like this every year. And unfortunately, it wasn't like that. We had Andy Roddick win a major there in 2003, and we haven't had an American win a major since. But anyway, it was a heck of a first U.S. Open. And what a story, right? I'm just a small-town broadcaster just doing a favor for a friend, and you get a tap on the shoulder that invites you to do the fourth and final major. And it's something that I've stuck with now for 25 years. Doing this for 25 years.
Wow. Talk about,
so that's the long story.
Talk about being at the right place at the right time. Unbelievable.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, you talked about your morning show, and I think it was KTTS was the station.
Correct. Yes, the legendary KTTS.
And talk about how doing that morning show, getting up before the sun, getting up at 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the morning, with the only job to put a smile on somebody's face first thing in the morning. How did that help shape you as an announcer?
That's a really good question. I think there's several layers to that, but responsibility. When you are the guy that is delivering people their first plate of information every day, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. I would be up at 2:30, get in there and do all of my research, and then it was like I'm primed and ready to present to my audience information that they need to know. And this was the era. I started at KTTS in 2001, and shortly thereafter, a couple of things flew into some towers in New York. It was a very trying, difficult, scary, frightening time for a lot of people. And so knowing that I had that responsibility and taking it seriously, and on top of that, living in a part of the country where we had a lot of severe weather, and we prided ourselves based on the legacy of that product in informing our neighbors and being there for our neighbors whenever they needed us. We were out chasing those storms as trained storm spotters in station vehicles and reporting back to the station every time there was severe weather in the area. So all of that responsibility, and then also trying to keep things light and doing things in my own unique kind of way to, I don't know, add some color to what we were doing, really contributed to how I approached doing announcing work. Just being comfortable on the microphone, first of all, but also understanding the responsibility and being prepared. Always be prepared for a radio show or for a birthday party you're going to be hosting or for a grand slam you're hosting where every single day there are 25,000 screaming fans watching 4 or 5 tennis matches.
Yeah, yeah. Well, to take that preparation a little step further and to hone in on tennis, all of our guests previously here on PAA Game Day share how they prepare for their events. And to me and to our listeners, it's fascinating to learn that all that goes into this, oftentimes before they even set foot in the arena. Now,
absolutely,
at an event like the U.S. Tennis Open, that has to be planned to the nth degree. If you could, just for a minute, take us through what you do to prepare, as well as all the other people who are involved in a presentation of a level of this championship.
I'll start with me. So this sport and the way I prepare for it, I'm going to be honest, has given me obsessive compulsive disorder. I kid you not. Because you have to imagine, it's not like you've got, I don't know, a basketball team that has 13 players, 5 of them on the court. No, you've got 2 leagues. Essentially, it's really more like 4 because you've got doubles tandems and all this other, sometimes you've got mixed doubles that come into the mix and things like that. So you've got all of these different players and you have to know how successful they've been recently, what are their biggest successes on tour over the past 15 years? Are they new on tour? What did they do in juniors? So I have like these Excel sheets for every player that I work on that I constantly update when I know that they've been scheduled for one of my matches the next day. But a lot of that work is done in advance. Like I'm preparing now for 2 events that I'll do in Doha, Qatar. One is the Qatar Total Energies Open, which is a WTA 1000 event that's women's tennis, and then I'll do the Qatar Exxon Mobil Open, which is the ATP 500 event for the men. So a lot of the names that I'll see there I've done before, and I've tracked their successes throughout the years. And then what I do is I write a 45 to 50 second biography that details their career. And then as the announcer, we'll probably get into this a little bit later, but as the announcer in tennis, I'm not calling balls and strikes or anything like that. What I'm doing is I'm presenting the athlete coming on the court. And so the worst ranked athlete, I'll introduce them first, and then the better ranked athlete, I'll introduce them second with these biographies during their warm-ups before the match begins. So a lot of research is done with that. Additionally, prior to an event like the U.S. Open or even these events in Doha, Qatar, they'll have things where they need me to record grounds announces or they need me to record videos that are being produced in advance of the production actually being done. As a voice artist, I have the equipment. This is a temporary booth that I have. I live in Germany now, so this is a temporary booth I currently have. But that's what you do. You help them. You help all of the stakeholders with whatever needs to be accomplished prior to, while also getting your own writing and work done so that you're prepared. At the U.S. Open, once I arrive, I start sharing this content with the people and fact checkers that need to look through this stuff. Thank God I have them. And then they get back to me with a finalized script, and then that's what we move forward with when we're doing our presentation and our production on center court in Arthur Ashe Stadium.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned the names and the players, and you're dealing with athletes from every corner of the world. Right. And I know when I talk to some PA announcers in the National Hockey League, they've created their own database where each PA announcer reads the roster. So the PA announcer in Buffalo, if Dallas is coming in, can go to the link, find the Dallas PA announcer, read the Stars lineup, so he knows how to say them when they come into Buffalo. And you were telling me prior that the WTA and the ATP does something similar to that. Could you explain how that works?
Yeah. First of all, mad props to all the guys in the NHL for doing that and getting each other's back. I love that. In tennis, when I first started, we didn't have any resources like that, and it was literally like trying to find people. Imagine you've got 128 talents in the men's draw, 128 talents in the women's draw, a locker room that you can't go into because you're a dude, and you've got to find people or people related to these people that where you can say, all right, can you tell me how to pronounce their name? And oftentimes you'd talk to somebody at the WTA or the ATP, and they'd go, I don't know, I'd rather have them say it for you.
Oh, you well, eventually, how many times I've run into that myself where the coach or somebody says, I don't know how to pronounce it. I always use their first name.
Right. Okay. And so you go, okay, well, finally they said that enough. I'd rather have them say it to you. Finally, it clicked to them. They said it enough, and they were like, okay, well, we're going to build a resource where you guys can just click on their name, and they will be saying it for you. But this was like the late 90s, early 2000s, so it wasn't like everybody had a fantastic website or had enough bandwidth so that they could host all of this information. But over time, what's happened is like the ATP and the WTA have profiles about every player on their websites, and on most of those player names, they've taken a moment or two at one tournament or other and put a microphone in front of the player's face and said, could you just please say your name for me? And the players do that, and so as announcers, we can go on there and make sure that we are pronouncing it correctly, though I have been burned by this before. Yes, there's a really funny kid out of France. He's a great guy. He performed really well in Doha one year, but his name is Corentin Moutet. Corentin Moutet. My French is horrible, but that's more or less how you would say it. But he was messing around when he recorded that, and he wrote. He said Corentin Moutet. Corentin Moutet. And so, no, he did it in a Spanish style. He went, Corentin Moutet. And so I thought, well, maybe that's how he says it. So the first few times I mentioned his name in Doha, I said it like that until somebody with the ATP finally came up to me and said, we took his audio down off the website. He was screwing around. You're saying it wrong. It's Corentin Moutet. Okay, very good. Mm-hmm. But listen, Tom, this is great. I'm glad you brought this up because this is a game we used to play all the time on KTTS whenever I was working the U.S. Open in New York.
All right.
Madly, what I would do in New York is I would get up at 5:30 in the morning, do my radio show there in Arthur Ashe Stadium, and then I'd be there until about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning doing tennis events, and then I would come back and do the radio show again. I would only get like 2 hours of sleep. But we would play the U.S. Open name game. Oh, can you pronounce that tennis player's name? Now, what's your last name again, Tom?
Winiecki.
Winiecki. That sounds very Polish.
It is. If you said it naturally, it'd be Winiecki.
Yeah, Winiecki. And so you should have no problem with this 6-time Grand Slam champion of the male talents, Winiecki. How do you say this name?
Okay, let's see. First name is Iga. Swiatek?
Correct. That's good.
Iga Swiatek. Okay.
That's pretty good. That was pretty good. You got the sh. You got the sh. A lot of people don't get the sh. It's Iga Swiatek. Now there's an N kind of added in
all right.
there, but that's Polish. Iga Swiatek.
All righty.
Let's go Canadian.
Okay.
French Canadian. Love this kid. He reminds me of the late, great Arthur Ashe every time I see him. When I first saw him, I thought, hey, is next coming of Muhammad Ali, but he's since slimmed down quite a bit. See if I can get it all in frame. All right, so French Canadian name, how would you pronounce?
Felix, I have to work on the French part, but let's see. Auger Aliassime. Auger Aliassime.
That's good. Oh, yes, my brother. Felix Auger-Aliassime. Felix Auger-Aliassime. Okay. You nailed it.
All right.
This guy's good.
All right.
Let's do one more here. See if you can get this one. This is a top shelf Chinese talent. Been in the top 5 on the WTA Tour. Hey, now, you've talked to people that have worked the Olympics, so there's something you have to keep in mind. This is a Chinese name. There's a specific rule that applies.
Yeah, it's what I know about that is if they're a Chinese national, it's the last name first.
Exactly, surname first.
So I'm going to say Zheng Qiwen.
Zheng Qiwen. That's it. Zheng Qiwen. That's pretty good.
All right.
And we'll top this off with my favorite one. This is a lady I saw for the first time in Stowe, Vermont, playing for her country against the U.S. in Fed Cup competition. She's one of the nicest human beings on the planet. Let's see if you can get this one, Tom.
Let's see. Anastasia Palyachenkova.
That's pretty good. I mean, I'll give you credit for that. It's Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova. Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova.
All right, now,
and this has been another installment of the U.S. Open Name Game.
So there'll be lovely parting gifts when we're done.
That's right. You win nothing, Tom.
And I'll be very happy to walk away from this, yes.
You win 30 minutes with an idiot. Hey.
All right. On that note, folks, this looks like a good time for me to take a quick break. And when we return, we'll take some little more time and have Andy go into a little more depth into exactly what he does and doesn't do at the U.S. Tennis Open. We'll be right back. Announcing the Game is a free resource to public address announcers that take you through how to take your skills to the next level. A simple click on the sport gives you free access to a video that goes over terminology and rules specific to a lot of sports. So take a look. See if we can help you improve your skills. So here we are, folks, back with Andy Taylor, the public address announcer voice for the U.S. Tennis Open. Now, Andy, I imagine, and you alluded to this a little bit earlier, that being a tennis public address announcer is different from other sports. As you said, you're not calling balls and strikes. You're not calling the points in each match. I've heard you describe yourself as that man behind the curtain, sort of a Wizard of Oz. So if you could go a little deeper into your role at the U.S. Open. When do you talk? What are you saying? When are you supposed to stop talking?
So listen, if you're a tennis fan and you're watching on television, you really only have one opportunity to hear that stadium announcer do his work. And that is when the players first walk on court. There's usually a dramatic tunnel walk after a pre-match interview hosted by whichever network happens to be covering it or international world feed. And then I will do sort of a dramatic but not over-the-top introduction of them as they walk onto the court.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the players for today's championship match. Stan Wawrinka. And the #1 player in the world, Novak Djokovic.
After that, of course, your host broadcasters are going to take over. They have their former players and their commentators that are doing their own pre-match routine. Now my responsibility is fully on those who've paid to be there. And this is really important to me. I wish a lot more events would refocus on these people have paid to be at this event, and we need to give them a solid production that that values the ticket holder as much as the TV audience.
Yeah,
and I think that's what a lot of us do. I guarantee you, those who are watching PAA Game Day podcast are just like that. And that's what we commit to at the U.S. Open. So after the players are on the court, it's a handoff with TV, and now the players start to warm up. They have about 4 minutes. At the 3-minute mark, as I mentioned earlier, I'll introduce one of the players with a biography that I've written.
Yep.
At the 2-minute mark, I'll introduce the other player with a biography that I've written. At the 1-minute mark, I'll talk about the head-to-head between those players, how many times they've played, who's got the better advantage. I'll get some sponsor mentions in. At 30 seconds, we kind of bow out, and then everything is in the hands of the chair umpire. That's the tradition of the sports, the way it should be. It's been going on for well over 100 years, and they take control of the entire production from that point forward, from putting replays up on the video board to calling the score, all of that. It's not the responsibility of a tennis announcer to do that. It is the responsibility of the chair umpire.
Yeah.
When the match is over, if I'm at a smaller event like these events in Doha, which are by no means small. They're fantastic, tremendously well-produced events. But like when I'm doing that work, now I'm courtside. I announce the winner's name. I walk the defeated player off, and then I will go out and do an interview for the house and for international broadcasters, whoever's picking up our feed. You do that interview, you send the player off, and then, boom, you refine your position and you get ready for the next match to come on. Now, while the match is occurring, you may be thinking, well, I'm just sitting there watching tennis. What a great job. Unfortunately, that's not the truth. What you're doing in that downtime is you're monitoring the match. It's not really downtime because you're writing and preparing for either last-second matches that have been moved to your court. Maybe you've got other talents on other courts that don't have time to get stuff written because they're busy doing 800 other things, so you're helping them out a little bit, or you're writing for matches the next day. As if that weren't enough, you've also got a second or a third microphone in your face where somebody's asking for a recording to be made because there's a book signing happening over here, or there's been weather that came through and everything's okay on your court because you have a roof, but the other 17 courts are dealing with the weather, and we need to make announcements and produce this video so that folks understand exactly where they need to be under the circumstances and if lightning's in the area and all of that. So you're always, I don't know, it's kind of like in my booth at the U.S. Open inside Arthur Ashe Stadium, it's in lower broadcast, which is like as high as you can get. The players look like tiny ants down there. Thankfully, I've got video monitors that help me see where everyone is, and I can help out TV for their show and help out everybody with our show. But we have a DJ, we have an audio engineer, we have a stadium director, and we have me. And there's 4 of us in there. And it's like the Starship Enterprise, it's a bridge, and we're there connecting the audience to TV and connecting TV to the audience and helping out in so many different ways that you never even see, whether it's on television or whether you're there in person. Yeah. So it's a busy role. It's a very busy role, and it's nice when the day's over and you can catch about 2.5, 3 hours of sleep just to get up and do it all over again.
I know, but busy, but the day probably flies.
It does, yeah. When you have that much going on, maybe you've got a 30-minute read to do over here, and at the same time you're watching this over here. I talked earlier about how this sport has made me obsessive-compulsive. You have to be, because you've got to be on top of 1,500 things at once. It's just the way it is. I love hearing from and watching these other announcers that have the opportunity to react to what's happening in play. And there is a serious level of focus that is required for that. These guys are gifted and super talented, whether it's lacrosse, whether it's hockey, whether it's, American football, reacting to what's happening on the field and doing it in your own unique way that connects with the audience is a tremendous skill set. And that's something that I learned when I had the opportunity last summer to do both fencing and taekwondo at the Olympic Games in Paris. Yeah. Finally, I had an opportunity to react to what was happening on 4 different pistes in fencing because I did the day session with my fellow French announcer, and so we were it was constant craziness. And there's a joy. There's a lot of fun in that, but it is exhausting when you're done. So like where sports where you'll have like, I don't know, a 90-minute timed game, right? And then you're done. The announcers who get done with that game are exhausted just from the sheer focus of what they've done.
Absolutely.
Tennis is more like the tennis day because it goes on all day and it's a 14-day event. It's not like we played Sunday. No, it's a 14-day event, 21 days really at the U.S. Open because we've incorporated so many things, including a mixed doubles championship and qualifying prior to the tournament. It's more like a marathon that just it starts to wear on you after several days of only getting a couple hours of sleep. And being focused and creative all the time of trying to write something that would matter to the player who hears you read their biography and what they're doing. So I got so much admiration for the guys that have that focus to do that on the pitch as much as you do. And I don't get the opportunity to do that much. So I guess I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, but then I would imagine, I know from my perspective, the feeling is 100% reciprocal. To know what I go through, or somebody that does a football or a soccer or an ice hockey or a lacrosse or a baseball game or a tournament there, but then to hear somebody do something for 3 weeks straight, every day, all day, and part of the night, all the time, it's like, okay, you can stay over there. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. Yeah. Now
totally.
Going back to
I totally
City,
get that. Yeah.
Now going back to New York City and the U.S. Open, you talked about they have both day and night sessions. Could you talk about the differences working those two sessions, the energy at both sessions, what that's like in New York City?
You know, a lot of it depends on the player. Like if it's a really well-known player, like when Roger Federer would play, it didn't matter whether it was a day session or a night session. The fans were going to be there and they were going crazy. But night sessions at the U.S. Open, regardless of who's playing, is an event in and of itself. In fact, the U.S. Open, especially post-COVID, where people were really hungry to get out and do something again, has just absolutely ballooned. It's, I believe, the highest attended, because it's 14 days, the highest attended sporting event annually, because you've got more than one stadium as well, right? You've got Arthur Ashe Stadium with like 25,000 seats. Then you've got, the grandstand, and then you've got court 17. You've got all these different courts around. And so, while you may have 25,000 fans in Arthur Ashe Stadium, you may have had 157,000 fans come through the gates that day alone, right? So the night session, day sessions are great because they can actually stay for the night session even if they don't have Arthur Ashe Stadium tickets. They can stand outside Arthur Ashe Stadium by the fountains, drink countless honeydeuces, and watch the matches on these big screens right there. I mean, it's a party atmosphere, and that's kind of what happens, right? And so inside the stadium, we do all the tricks that everybody does at modern sporting events today, which is you get fans on camera, right? I mean, that is crucial. But we have a truly talented DJ in DJ Triz who works in sport all over the world. I think he's heading over to Milan here soon. He's based out of Colorado, but he is like the DJ inside Arthur Ashe Stadium at the U.S. Open, and he can read the match and the mood among the fans and play the right thing at the right time. And once we get sponsor stuff out of the way or any other responsibilities that we got to take care of, boom, we immediately tie ourselves in with the TV guys and we get those camera shots of fans. And what you get is tons of celebrities at the U.S. Open every year. You've got shots of celebrities, and then you're going to shots of fans, and then another shot of a celebrity, and the music is getting mixed into what we're doing. And so if you ever have the opportunity to get a night session ticket for Arthur Ashe Stadium at the U.S. Open, it doesn't have to be those super expensive ones that are quarterfinal, semifinal, final. You could go early on during the tournament. There is an atmosphere, a party that transcends tennis going on inside that court. In fact, I would say throughout the grounds of the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center.
Really?
The U.S. Open is more than it's more than just a tennis event. Yes, it's a tennis event in terms of the sport itself. It's the fourth and final Grand Slam on the calendar. But the U.S. Open is a moment. It's a 2-week moment that captivates New York. And people come from all over the world, but it is genuinely and uniquely defined by New York, and New Yorkers turn out to support it like you wouldn't believe. I love it. It's just, it's mind-blowing every year. It's humbling. It's humbling to play a small part in it.
Well, yeah, but to listen to you describe it and paint the picture of what it's like, and even if you're not in the stadium, you have a day session ticket, you hang outside for a night session. To me, I equate that to tailgating, an all-day tailgate for 2 weeks.
Yes.
And
with
just,
honey deuces, the signature drink of the U.S. Open. I can't sell it enough. And Heineken all over. But enough with the. But people bring their kids. People bring, you see 4 generations of a family hanging out together in front of the fountains at the U.S. Open that share a passion for the sport or just want to be where the action is in New York. Yes. But, on the week before and the week following Labor Day. I mean, that is the. It's a quintessential New York moment, and God, it's so cool to play a role in.
Just
it.
A small
really
part
is.
of it, yeah. Now, earlier you talked about the fit or the atmosphere they were trying to create at the U.S. Open with you and getting tapped on the shoulder, and how you fit their vision of what they wanted the U.S. Open to morph into. Could you take a minute and compare what and how you do things in New York City to the announcers at the other 3 tennis majors, at Wimbledon, at the French Open, and in Australia at the Australian Open, and how they fit what they want those majors to be like?
Absolutely. So I think most people know Wimbledon, and Wimbledon itself is the benchmark. It is the legacy of the sport. It is formal. It's a heck of a lot more formal than the others, but it's awesome. It has its place, and it's so revered and so cool. Wimbledon is white clothing, royalty, strawberries and cream, people being seen on a smaller grass court. And I'll give you an idea. Like when the players walk out on the court at Wimbledon, nobody gets an introduction, and it's not one player and then the next. The 2 guys or the 2 ladies or the 2 doubles tandems, they all walk out at the same time, and there's a smattering of applause as they come onto the court. The chair umpire then takes his position or her position, and they commence the proceedings. That is the sport of tennis. It's very formal, and it's very. It makes you tear up. I mean, it really hits you. If you're a huge tennis fan, it hits you while you're there of just what has happened in this hallowed ground, in this hallowed space. Roland Garros is the site of what many Americans call the French Open. This gentleman who is so incredibly talented who does that event, the multilingual Marc Maury, who I was just doing the Olympics, and he and I were so close to finally meeting up for the first time, but we've never had a chance to meet in person, but we've talked quite a bit. He's formerly an actor, but he is like the quintessential Marlboro man, French presenter, and he is so good. Like had a really strong connection with Rafael Nadal and many of the players because he was seeing them on a regular basis. Whereas me, I'm like this voice up in the booth. Mark was like a host for them, right? A host for the players and a host for the fans, and he just sort of welcomes people into his embrace. Then you've got the 2, opposing ends of the calendar in Australia, in Melbourne at the Australian Open, and then New York, the U.S. Open. They're very similar as far as energy, craziness, fans. The venues are a little bit smaller at the Australian Open, but that does not matter. I mean, they bring so much energy. It's so much fun to watch both the action on the court and the fans interacting with each other throughout that entire 2 weeks of it's just crazy, and it's coming up soon. So make sure you do tune in to watch some of the Australian Open. But their presentation is it's based on sport, really. They don't necessarily have as many. Like at the U.S. Open, you'll have opening ceremonies, and prior to the championship matches, you'll have an anthem performer that does some performances. Sometimes there are concerts that happen throughout the venue, especially during Fan Week. But the Australian Open and the U.S. Open have kind of pushed each other to grow these events beyond the sport itself, and both continue to push each other in positive ways like that. So, when you're looking to get crazy, I would fly to Melbourne or New York for a couple of days of tennis during the height of summer in Melbourne, and just as we're transitioning to fall in the U.S.
All right, all righty. So this sounds like everybody does things, and everything is in their place the way it's wanted to be done in 4 different parts of the world. And
everybody's got their own vision, as they should, and they connect with their audiences the best way they know how.
Yes. So, folks, here's another quick break for us. We'll take a quick changeover break here. And when we come back, Andy will talk about his take on technology's effect on what he does. We'll be right back.
www.publicaddressannouncer.org.
So here we are, folks, back with Andy Taylor, the stadium voice for the U.S. Tennis Open. Now, Andy, we talked about technology a little bit before we were recording today and its effects on our lives. Nobody goes anywhere without this silly thing. Everybody's got one. How has technology affected what you do and say at an event like the U.S. Open?
Listen, anybody who's been working in an arena like this, if you will, pardon the pun, for over 25, 30 years will tell you, back when we started, what we did drove the event. There wasn't the technology where every surface of the stadium was covered with a video board, right? We didn't have but maybe 1 or 2 jumbotrons, big video walls where you aired some video that was kind of out of focus because the technology wasn't that great. It was like it was tube technology that we were trying to incorporate into a stadium setting, but you made it work. What really drove and informed and oftentimes entertained those ticket holders who attended these events was the voice. You never knew what that guy or gal looked like, but man, you identified that voice right away. They were going to tell you exactly, what time things begin. They were going to tell you exactly what just happened on that play. They were kind of a lifeline of information to what you were doing, and tennis was no different. When I first started in 2002, and I would say up until 2009, 2 years after the iPhone's introduction, it was still kind of like that, where the voice of the event was driving the ship forward and helping the audience move with the action. We weren't there to take any attention away from what was happening on court, on the pitch, on the field, whatever. We were there to accentuate it and to drive the audience forward with what was happening. But then as the iPhone came out, and people had all this information in their pockets and their own show, really, on Facebook or whatever they were using, you notice that started to trend away. And at the same time, it became more affordable and the technology was a lot better to start installing different video boards or crawls of information in a stadium. And now I don't care where you go. It doesn't matter what the sport, what the event, what the stadium, there is just so much information being thrown in your face that the actual voice you hear is drowned out by all of that. Because if you're not, checking stats on your phone or maybe just taking pictures of what was happening on the field, you've got all the information you need of, let's say you're at an NFL game, it's 3rd down, 14 to go. Those questions that we had when we would be watching television in 1988, like, what down is this? I don't even know what quarter it is. Well, you have that answered instantaneously, whether you're watching television or you're in the stadium, because the stadium itself is a giant television set. 400 giant television sets. And so it's, selfishly from our standpoint, we're not as romantically entwined into the presentation of these events anymore. But we're still there, right? Yeah. We're still there, and we still care, and we still serve an important role. It's just that people have a way of getting all the information they used to glean from us in a way that I think a lot of people prefer. But romantically, it's kind of a bummer for a guy like me.
Yeah, I can completely sympathize. Now, if I could kind of change track here a little bit with the technology, what about something like AI? Are you and I and other announcers listening and watching, are we eventually looking at a time where we're just all going to be replaced by a bot?
I mean, if it's just me and you and we're two voice actors sitting in a padded room like I am and you're not, thank God, I would say, yeah, that's going to happen. But sport is funny. Things happen during a sporting event, and you need to be able to react to that, whether it's what's happening on the field or what's happening in the stands. You need a human element to that to be able to take a microphone and go. So I think in the future there will be AI elements to everything that's going on, from how information gets input and put up on the board to maybe a voice that they've chosen to license through AI, but there will always be some person with a microphone nearby because there have to be ways in an emergency to communicate to people, hey, listen, there's something going on here, and you need to, those emergency announcements that we all have and prepare for before each event. So I don't think the stadium announcer will be replaced, but I think AI is trouble for a lot of our colleagues.
I can certainly see where your thinking is going at both ends, the taking things away, but at the same time, as you said earlier, there has to be a human element, a way for a human being to respond, to drive that event, to drive that play at 3rd and 14 or bottom of the 9th or overtime on the ice or something like that. There has to be something. Otherwise,
I mean, you can program these voices to say all of this stuff at certain times and all of that, but no 3rd down is the same as the last 3rd down. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and you want that individual character's voice that people tie into the Jets or tie into the Vikings or tie into the Cowboys. You want that voice reacting to that in their unique way, because it's not going to be the same every time. If it's an AI voice that says, okay, the situation is this, this person, every 3rd down is going to sound the same.
Yeah, as you say, there's no way it should. So let's kind of make things a little bit lighter here and step away from tennis for a bit. You talked about being a voiceover artist, and I see you were also a game show host. You hosted a traveling version of The Price is Right. Now, Andy, how did that come about, and what in the world was that experience like?
So that was desperation. So what happened was in 2011, so here I was living in my paradise, Southwest Missouri, the middle of nowhere. I had land, I had an RV, I had a boat, I had toys. I loved it. Life was so good. But my wife got tired of talking to cows. She wanted to talk to people. So she was like, listen, I know you're from Boston. We've been there, 5-6 times. What do you think about going to Boston? I said, all right, I got to make sure that we can actually survive if I'm not working in radio. So by 2007, when the iPhone came out, I already saw the writing on the wall. Radio wasn't necessarily something that I wanted to continue pursuing because it was getting cratered. And so I committed to 4 more years, and in 2011, I retired. And respectfully from my wife, I was like, all right, listen, I'm going to do this and try and start a voiceover career. I'd already been doing some voiceover, but like go into that full time. And if we survive 3 years, then we'll move to Boston. So we were living in the cheapest part of the country. It was a smart move. During that time, there's a popular community just south of Springfield, Missouri called Branson.
Yes.
And it's, country performers who are past their prime or young up-and-coming talent who open theaters. Yep. Silver Dollar City is like a key attraction down there. Super, super place for families. Great place to visit during the summer. The Lawrence Welk Theater was bringing in Fremantle Media's production of The Price is Right Live. And I had just retired from radio, and somebody suggested that I throw my name in the mix. Right. So I went down and auditioned. This is another one of those, you never know. Let's give it a shot. Mm-hmm. Went down, auditioned, was scared to death, and they were like, yeah, that's good enough. You're hired. So I was the voice. I was the Rod Roddy of The Price is Right Live at the Welk Resort in Branson, Missouri. Right. And I worked with an assortment of different game show hosts that you would recognize but not know their name, like David Ruprecht, Mark Wahlberg, not the actor, but the island guy, Todd Newton. But after a couple of seasons and doing some traveling stuff, we'd been to Canada and all that, they decided to bring in Jerry Springer as the host. And I kid you not, I had the absolute pleasure to work with Jerry Springer for 2 years doing this show at the Welk Resort in Branson, and he was one of the kindest, coolest, smoothest human beings I ever had the opportunity to hang out with, and so supportive. And I remember my dad was turning 70, and he filmed a little clip with me and was asking me about this video I was producing for my dad. But he was all about family. He may have stirred the pot like you wouldn't believe, but when the cameras were off, he was with his family somewhere.
Oh, wow. Oh, geez.
What a good dude. He was a good dude.
It sounds like it. You never know what you see on the screen is not always what the real person is. They're just playing a role. And yeah. Now here,
but who says to themselves, one day I'm going to be on a stage giving away cars with Jerry Springer.
Of course you are. Yeah, that's the next logical thing to do.
That'll happen. Yeah.
All right, Andy, here's some quick questions that we ask all of our guests. First of all, you referred earlier to those dynamic men's and women's singles that you just backed into at your first year at the U.S. Open. But besides those, any of those, did we just see that? Moments that you just told yourself, I can't believe I just saw that.
To me, that is the Paris Olympics. Hats off to France a million times over. The Olympics in Paris, France in 2024 were top shelf. And for me to get the opportunity to do a quintessential French sport, fencing, in the Grand Palais on the Champs-Élysées in the heart of Paris, France, with the glass and the lighting and the 4 pistes narrowed down to 1 piste for the championships, and it being packed day after day, night after night, fans losing their mind with every strike. To me, that is the most amazing experience I've had in sport, and I'm over 50 years old. And I would say it went beyond just the event I was at, but to be at the Grand Palais fencing and to see France medal like that was incredible.
Oh, unbelievable. Now, I hate to do this, but on the other end of that spectrum, at the other extreme, all of us have had something come out of our mouth, and we instantly want it back, and we hope against hope that nobody heard it, but we know that they did. Is there one for you?
Oh, yeah. Mine's the worst, actually. So it was the sport of paddle, and as always in paddle, you have Spain and Argentina in the championship. It's the best of 3 matches. This particular evening in Doha, Spain won the first match. And Spain was well ahead in the second match. And it looked like we were all going to be able to catch our flights. We were ecstatic. However, Argentina was unbelievable. They came back and kind of evened things up in that second match, and the clock kept ticking. Clock kept ticking. And we're all looking at each other, and we're looking at our flights, and we're going, we're going to miss our flights now. What do we do? You know, there was a lot of tension in the air. How do we get this done? And suddenly Argentina wins that second match. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I guess we're done here. I guess we're going to make our flights. And I walk out there and I announce that Argentina was I don't even remember what year it was, is the blank, blank, blank world champion, because there was so much confusion about the flights. So it was tied at 1-1. But I went out there and at the top of my lungs announced that Argentina had just won the world championship. I was devastated at the moment. Yes, you can find the humor in it, but it's just those moments. Actually, failures are the best thing that can happen to you, because they will help with that OCD you need to develop to ensure that those moments don't happen again. Yeah. And I truly regret that happened. And I have, in retrospect, now that I've got distance between it, found some of the humor in it. But mostly you have to cut yourself a little bit of slack every now and then and say, this stuff's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you just have to learn from it and move on. And that was a big one. That's it. Oh, it makes me sweat just readmitting that it happened. But yeah, I crowned somebody a winner, even though it was tied in the world championship.
Oh yeah. But you're right. It happens. And time heals, and you can eventually say, okay. But at the time, I know exactly what that feeling in the pit of your stomach is like. We've all had
it's
that.
Horrifying.
So, And Andy, with all the experiences that you've had announcing such a wide array of events, and plus your time at an event like the U.S. Open, if you could give one bit of advice to a PA announcer out there, regardless of the level or their level of experience, what would that one bit of signature Andy Taylor wisdom be?
Well, I think based on the stories that I've told today, be ready. Be flexible. Be ready for anything, because you don't know when lightning is going to strike. So listen, if you're just getting into this and you're watching this podcast because you aspire to be the specific broadcaster or specific announcer for this favorite sport team, don't narrow your focus like that. What I would do is broaden my focus a little bit and try and be the best announcer I can possibly be with the character that I want to create, and I would work on that character. And then when lightning does strike, maybe it is that dream job that you've always wanted. And that's probably the best thing, is to cycle towards that. But if something else comes along, maybe not even in that genre, not in that sport, you should take that opportunity and do that. And listen, as technology continues to cycle over and over, I mean, it's growing so rapidly now compared to when I was a kid. There are going to be opportunities that come left and right, and they may not actually be like in front of people, but you could be the lead announcer for something that has so many views, you might as well be, at a World Cup match. So just be flexible in what you're willing to do, but ultimately where your work should lie is in the preparation of you and your individual character of presentation, regardless of event or sport. Make that your focus, and then just be ready for when the lightning does strike.
Absolutely. Terrific long-term and short-term advice. So everybody, that's going to do it again for yet another episode of PAA Game Day. A special thank you to today's guest, Andy Taylor. Andy, all of us associated with PAA Game Day, from our producers, Matthew Wallace and James Earl Rockefeller out in California, to myself in Central New York State, and everybody else associated with us, we sincerely thank you and appreciate that you took some time to sit with me today to hear all that goes into something like the U.S. Open. Insightful, eye-opening, and entertaining at the same time. So thank you, sir. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
And for all of you, thank you for taking some time to join us today on our 14th podcast. You can see all our other conversations I've had on our previous podcast at PAAGameday.com, or whether you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcast. We appreciate that you'd share this with other people that may be interested as well, and take a minute and leave a review. That feedback helps shape our future podcast. And on our next one, I'll be sitting down with Sebastian Goulet, a public address announcer for Olympic ice hockey in previous Olympics and the upcoming Olympics in Milan. So until next time, I'm Tom Winiecki, and I can't wait to hear you on the mic.